Thank you, Chair Pierman-Gilman. And now, it gives me great pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker this morning, Mr. Casey Jackson. Casey is the founder and executive director for the Institute for Individual and Organizational Change. He has been training on motivational interviewing since 2002 and has been part of the International Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers since 2008. Over the years, he has provided over 3,000 trainings to individual agencies, corporations, and government organizations, including healthcare, mental health, substance use, law enforcement, justice and corrections, employment services, child welfare, and schools and universities. He passionately embraces empowering people to create the transformation that they are seeking in their personal and in their professional lives. Mr. Jackson has worked in the human service field for over 30 years, and prior to founding the Institute for Individual and Organizational Change, he was the Director of Training and Technical Assistance for the Washington Institute for Mental Health Research and Training through Washington State University. He's internationally recognized for his trainings on effective communications and change management in organizations and government. In addition to his work in the United States, Mr. Jackson has been invited to present on strategic communication and the impact on organizational change in Australia, Canada, England, Germany, Ireland, New Zealand, and in Poland. Mr. Jackson is the lead author on the internationally recognized communication fidelity tool, the Motivational Interviewing Competency Assessment. He has focused his training and consultation on creating change and improving outcomes for professionals, organizations, and the communities that they serve. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Casey Jackson.
Mostly I'm a scrub from the Spokane Valley. That's what I'm going to say first. Thank you for having me here. It's very much an honor. When I think of a commencement speech, I think you guys should be listening to like Michelle Obama or Jeff Bezos or somebody that has a little more clout than I do. I even think at this moment in time, you probably could have drawn down like Will Smith or Johnny Depp or Amber Heard at this point. You know, that would have been a better use of 10 minutes is my guess. So I'm basically the poor man's version of Kevin Arnold from the Wonder Years. So that's what you're going to get right now. Like you who are graduating, I was raised by exceptional parents. I was very lucky. My parents fell in love. They came from very rough childhoods, fell in love with each other. It was just amazing. And they were two people that treat each other with the utmost love and respect. And they treat each other as equals. And I can tell you, this was not easy for my mother, who does not believe that men are equal to women. But what they made a decision is they wanted to change the world. And so they had 5 children. I was the youngest of 5 boys. And my mom's goal was to make sure that we changed the world and that we were never a burden on a woman. So to that end, she made sure that all 5 boys knew how to cook, clean, sew, do laundry, clean up after ourselves. And my mom was not good at any of those things. But she was exceptional at changing the world. She marched on DC for women's rights, which is really important right now. She marched on children's rights on DC. She worked in Olympia to ratify the Equal Rights Amendment in the 70s, just a powerhouse. She dug a swimming pool in our backyard and taught tens of thousands of kids to swim. Just amazing. She's one of the first women in the country to coach men's baseball and took a lot of crap for that. So she just went about beating their butts to show them that women were better than men as coaches, which was impressive to watch as a child. And she started the Spokane Valley Girls Softball League since girls didn't have things to do in the summer. So I can list all of her accomplishments, and that doesn't bother me in the least. I just don't like talking about myself as much. And my career epiphany happened for me when I was in high school. So for me, there's this thing, I don't know if any of you have heard about natural helpers. There's this survey when you're in high school. We had a pretty decent high school in the valley, 1,500 kids, and they put out a survey. And so all the students, we had to fill out this survey, and it was everything from, sexuality issues, depression, suicide, study habits, how do you deal with anger, your family, your friends. And when you filled out this survey, at the end of the survey, what you had to do is you wrote down 2 students you'd go talk to about this issue, or a parent, or one of the teachers you talked to. And they took the top 30 students and the top 5 teachers, and they sent us away to this retreat for a week. And in high school, it was my first exposure to self-awareness. Like, just to see, you know, all of these peers of mine from different cliques struggling with some of the same angst, the same insecurity. It didn't matter what group you belonged to. And what I knew in high school at that moment is I was going to research and find out, could I make a living helping other people? And it's so many of the things that you all chose to do by choosing the degrees that you chose, is to make a difference in somebody's lives. That's all I cared about. I didn't know what I was going to set out and accomplish, but I just knew that I had a passion to do that. And that was really important to me. With that clarity, I went straight to Eastern with the intention of getting my psychology degree. I wanted to be a therapist. That was really important to me. Got into addiction studies, then went on from there and got my master's in social work because I knew that was much more marketable than psychology was. And what was so amazing is that passion that I had opened up doors that I never thought would open up to me. It just didn't seem like that was possible. One of the very first jobs that I had, and I think this is so important when you go out into the work world, one of my very first jobs I had was working with sexually abused preschool children, which is not an easy population to work with. And so I'm, 19, 20 years old, and, I'm co-facilitating, but more than half the time I was out in the hallway just leaning up against the hall sobbing. Like, this was just rough. And you all are gonna run into really difficult situations. But I had this moment, this epiphany out there, leaning up against the wall, just sobbing, and something came into my brain that just said, you don't need to feel sorry for them. The world will feel sorry for them. They need your help. And that just changed my perspective. And so taking that into account and trying to move forward with that, it was that passion that I had, these jobs that opened up to me. Most of them truly, I worked with some of the faculty here, they were truly probably above my pay grade. Like, I really do. I do see myself as a little scrub from 6th and Bowdish over in Spokane Valley. So to be here is just overwhelming, the thought of that. But what I knew drove me was because I have a passion for helping people. And those are the things you really want to hold on to. So there's 2 things that I teach when I'm teaching motivational interviewing, and they're really core concepts that help you in life. And one of the first things that I learned, and this is so important in health sciences, that's so important for all of us, there is, according to physics, there is no such thing as a resistant individual. There's no such thing as a resistant patient, or student, or teacher, or spouse. When you look at it according to physics, if I picked up a rubber band, how much resistance is in a rubber band? None. Until what? Until you pull on it. According to physics, this is resistance, or this is resistance. Energy between 2 people is resistance. An individual is ambivalent. So when you think you're working with a patient or a client that's resistant, it means that they're struggling inside. We, from a professional perspective, can overlook that. So that's the first thing that I remind you of, is when you run into things that you think are resistance, it takes 2 people for resistance to exist. The second thing that I'd leave you with, from all these things that I've learned and studied, is human beings cross-culturally genuinely want their behavior to be aligned with what their core values are. So if you tell me you're an honest person, if you tell me you're a respectful person, and if I rewind every social media post you've done in the last 2 years and said, well, was that respectful? Was that honest? Your knee-jerk reaction is to blame outside of yourself or make an excuse. So when you're thinking again with the patients or clients that you serve, when they're blaming outside themselves or making excuses, it means they have pro-social values. They're just not in alignment with that. Because we want to go about and we try to fix things, and instead what we want to do is try to help heal people. One of the things for me on that last concept that was really powerful, because I believe so much in what I teach and what I talk about, one of my core values is integrity. And I am the first to admit I am not above reproach. But it is the #1 filter that I use when I think about any situation. And when I first started to have to travel a lot, I had twin daughters, and I would come home from a week of training and mentally be numb, and my body was exhausted when you train day after day, and then you get in these airports and missed flights, and I come home wanting to cry. I open the door, the girls scream and throw their arms around me, and then they say, "Chase me." And chase me at our house means that we do a loop around the island in the kitchen, out through the living room, through the dining room, and then back around the island about 20 to 30 times while they scream. And I just wanted to cry. And it's when I was so deep into training this that I would just take a deep breath and think, what would it look like if you had integrity? So I would drop my suitcase, take a deep breath, smile, scream, and start chasing them. Because that's what integrity looked like. Nothing in my body wanted to do that. But that was the right thing to do. And there's days in this program, you guys have been exhausted. But you just kept going. And I think you need to look at that, the guts that it took you to do that. When you think of graduating and moving through a pandemic, how difficult that was. When you think of slogging through programs academically, days you didn't want to do it, and you chose to do it. And I want you to tap into that thing about, why did you choose to get this degree? What was it really about for you? What was your vision? What was your passion? Why did you want to do this? And tap into that vision and hold on to that as you go out and you change the world. And not just because my mom and dad said so. Thank you for having me.